A lot of people are scared or have this idea that letting these negative things that have happened to them, kind of take them off course or kind of hurt them in a sense. And even in my videos, I could definitely feel how some people might feel this way of ignoring the pain, of taking away from the pain. And even in a lot of the things you see, I've definitely tackled, things about social media and even friendships and connections and what outside people tell you about pretending to be unbothered or hurt people that hurt you and kind of getting this revenge one. I feel like it's going to be impossible to feel anything without experiencing pain, without experiencing suffering. And I feel like these problems that you get to experience, it now becomes a privilege. It now becomes this opportunity of growth. How are you supposed to enjoy life? How are you supposed to love yourself when you are ignoring these things? And I think that experience is definitely something that a lot of people need to talk about. A lot of people need kind of a refresher on, when it comes to hurting. How are you going to love yourself if you ignore the bad things that have happened to you? Those things are now a part of you, and those negative experiences let you grow. Those are now opportunities for you to become a new person, and I feel like those same very wounds that get open are exactly where light enters through. Now you are able to experience so much more life and be a lot more appreciative of these things once you experience hurt. You can't have any light without experiencing that darkness. And I think so many people have this idea that they're supposed to be unbothered or ignore all the negative things because those things aren't there for them, when really those things aren't meant to define you, but they help guide you. They help put you and place you in the positions that you need to be in order to grow, in order to become a new person. I think a lot of times when we are more open to this and we are more accepting of these negative things and these harsh realities that we do face, including our flaws or problems that have happened in the past, we are now more open to growth. We are now more open to that change. And I think we should always have that change. You should never have a prime because you are constantly growing and evolving. And this is something that we need to experience. This is something that we definitely need to be more open about. And I think when we are more open about it, it's only going to make it easier to actually experience, the goodness of life, the good things that we get to have. And I think when we are talking about suffering, it can be very easy to fall in this plethora of feelings, this feeling of emotions. And I think even when we are dealing with these emotions, it can be very hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, or seeing it half full or half empty. And perception definitely comes into play. I feel like the perception that we have will definitely mean so much more than the things that happen to us. And even when we are hurting and we're experiencing these negative things, I feel like the other side of this is experiencing it too much. You kind of make problems for yourself and hurt yourself in order to prove your suffering. And I think this is something that a lot of people do very much on a subconscious level. It's not even something that they are intending to do, even though some people do know. A lot of times we can do this and we are hurting ourselves. We're doing it to ourselves. A lot of times when we hurt ourselves to prove that we're suffering to other people. And I think a lot of times when you've built a home out of this sadness or this negative feeling, you kind of find a home because it is something that you've experienced so much. And now it is the place where you rest. This is a place where you are finding yourself a lot of times because it's so much easier to fall back into sadness than appreciate the good things in life. Because I feel like as soon as you start to feel good about things, you feel like a negative storm has to follow it. And I think when you have this pessimistic mindset, it's so much easier to fall in this habit of hurting yourself, even on a subconscious level, of self-sabotaging yourself just to prove that you are hurting, just to prove to yourself that you are meant to be in this sad, depressive, remorseful mood all the time. That's not you. You don't have to live in this pattern. And I think a lot of times that pattern will break you unless you break it. And I think when we want to feel better about ourselves, we have to understand that it definitely comes down to perception and our idea of who we are post pain, who we are after we experience something negative or after we, get our feelings hurt. What can we be out of that? And I think that definitely determines who you are, even as a person. A lot of people do bad things or they experience something horrible. And for me, seeing it now, seeing it with a newer mindset, it's understanding that it's not who that person was when it happened, but it's who that person is after it. Who did that person become after it? How is that person now after they experience that thing? And seeing that growth is definitely the most important piece of it all. You are able to see so much more, growth and change and embracement, of that pain. It just makes it a lot easier. And I think when we want to feel better about this pain and speaking on how it can guide you is the fact that if we never get hurt, if we never get challenged, we're never going to grow. And you can think about this in just about any sense. You can think about it in sports or in the gym or even in life, anatomy. we have to be challenged by something in order to experience growth. In order to change, or in order to have something new come about, there has to be something that hurts the present form of that thing. And we are that present form. Every single day of life, we are this present form. And I think when we are so much more susceptible to these good things, bad things, it's inevitable that they follow. But who we are out of it is going to say so much more about our character. And I think when you look back and you realize that you've been able to get over, any obstacle that's come your way or anything that's ever happened to you, you're still here. You're still able to get over those things. And I think the sooner we can accept that, the sooner we'll realize that we are so much more capable than we believe. You don't have to listen to what people say or what someone said to you that you aren't able to do this or you aren't able to do that. You can have anything when you are feeling this way, when you are feeling like you are capable of moving on and moving forward, and you are supposed to let these negative things help you do that. Like I said earlier, when we open these wounds and we get hurt and negative things happen, this is where light enters through. And it's something I heard in a quote, and it's such a great idea because it really shows the vulnerability in it. That getting hurt is now your opportunity of growth. It's not something that just has to be, damaging or horrible to you, and I think I've even spoke about it before about heartbreak, how heartbreak doesn't have to be something that hurts you. And that's the same that goes with rejection. When you get rejected or when things don't go your way, it is now an opportunity of growth. How are you going to do anything when people aren't even willing to accept you in that sense? And I think the most growth that we get to experience is in our connections with people, with life. When we are able to understand that people don't value the same things we do, we are so much more open to changing that. We're so much more open to having a newer and refixed position on it because we are so much more susceptible. And I think a lot of people can be very closed-minded when it comes to growth and suffering. And even, earlier phases of my life, I felt like it was very much this idea that you have to do something to get over that. When that's not the case. You don't just do something to get over it. You don't just forget it or try this new connection or new distraction. You face that thing, you heal from it, and you move forward. You don't do something for it, you move forward. And there's a big difference with this. And I think even now it can be very flawed with a lot of people saying, how you should move on is completely out of your mind. Get rid of them, just block them on everything. That's not moving on. That's just ignoring it. And that's ignoring them, and that's ignoring your issue. Out of sight, out of mind can definitely help you, but only for so long. How much longer till you go and you unblock that person, or you go and you run into that person and those feelings flood all the way back in because it's still open. It's still something that we are able to experience because we didn't actually heal from it the first time. And I think if we want to feel better about it, if we want to, fully change and add more to our life, it comes with that growth. It comes with that change. And we have to be so much more open about that in order to feel better about ourselves, Instead of ignoring it, face that issue. If you said everything you need, and I think a lot of times it definitely does come down to clarity. And I think that clear conscience is really all you need is knowing that you did everything in your power to help that person. You don't need anything else from that. That was completely it. And I think when we're holding on to make it something that it's not, it only makes it so much harder to experience the good things, That's the only closure that you'll ever need. And that closure is definitely something that we have to focus on when we want to move forward, The only closure you need is knowing that you tried everything to love that person correctly. And if that wasn't enough, why are you still thinking about this person? If this person wasn't able to value and appreciate the things that you were able to do for them, why give them that time? You have to realize that they're not on your mind as much as you think. And I think when we are trying to heal and move on from these things, we can definitely make it so much harder for ourselves. This person has definitely already moved on from you while you're still stuck on them. You're still adding emotion and being very emotionally dependent on this person and giving them, so much energy when you have to realize that they never gave that to you in return. They were never able to be that open. They were never able to, appreciate the love and effort that you're pouring into them. So why wait? Why make it feel like a waste? Why make it feel like what you were doing only hurt you when really you were benefiting yourself? You were able to be open and express that love. And I think when we are so open and able to do this, on a regular basis, we are only opening ourselves up for more love. We are now being more susceptible to feel better things in our life. And instead of feeling bad about yourself, feel great that you don't have this problem anymore. You don't have this issue anymore. You don't have anything nagging on you or hurting you. You're able to move forward. And I think if we want to move forward fully, it means embracing that pain. And it means understanding that no matter what happens, relationship, connection, even if we are living happy and comfortable, is that pain is something that can happen whenever. It's on no man's clock. And I think it is definitely important to understand that it's not understanding that, oh, pain's always going to happen, so I'm always going to be hurting. It's understanding that pain's always going to happen, and I know I will face it when I get there. And I think as soon as you start to kind of download this mindset, and it doesn't have to be this overly optimistic one, it just has to be this confident enough one to know that you are capable of getting over these things. These things don't have to, be a reason for you to feel horrible or feel really bad or like you aren't deserving of this or that thing. No. You are able to experience these good things, and now you are the person that you are. And I think the sooner we start to accept that and we start to embrace that pain and suffering and all these negative moods, even sadness, can force you to either fall deeper or to grow, to sprout, it gets so much better for ourselves. It gets so much easier to feel more confident and more assured and more ready to understand that we are so much more capable than we once believed. And I think the more we, kind of go into this mindset, the more we understand that we are capable, that we can have, the good, the ugly, everything in between, we're open to life and we're open to experience. And that experience will only open more doors for you into the future. And we have to understand that it's not on us. It's on our mindset, and it's on our perception that now shapes our reality. You have to embrace that pain in order to understand the good. And that is the biggest thing that a lot of people are missing out on. A lot of people have this idea that they're not doing it right or that it's horrible or whatever it may be. Embrace it and understand that you can be whoever you want out of that change, out of that hurt. That's the whole point. We can start seeing suffering as opportunities of growth rather than reasons to dwindle, reasons to dwell on it or feel worse. We have that choice. And it's time we take pride in it and we understand that we can do it.